And so what we're going to take you through is this day in the life of a smart building. The nice thing is, a lot of the things you're going to see aren't futuristic. They are grounded in what we can do today. The nice thing, though, is we started with things that were already economically viable, and they will only become more viable, so that when you walk out of here today, hopefully you have some ideas of what are some things that you can start thinking about as you work with your clients, as you work with your own firms, of how can you make those facilities work better for them. The other thing, just kind of for your keeping score along the bottom, we looked at what's the building's typical profile for using energy along with the electricity price. Because one of the things that we just face globally is it is a carbon-constrained world. Regardless of a carbon tax or any sort of limits on greenhouse gas emissions, helping buildings use less energy is just good business. It makes it better for the owners and operators, makes it better for the occupants, makes it better for the planet. And so when you think about a building and how it might work in a typical day, you can actually start the day before. You now have lots of data available from external sources of what's happening in the environment around them. One of the biggest impacts on how a building uses energy is what's the weather. And so we're almost having I'd argue, Indian summer in Milwaukee right now. But you have a lot of glass and steel buildings that even in the course of winter require cooling. And then in the height of summer, needed even more. And so you can get buildings that can begin to pull in data of what does tomorrow look like. And in a typical summer day, you're going to need a significant cooling load, and you want to find a way to shift that. So if we can do that, you can tell the building to start making cooling overnight through things like ice or thermal storage and begin to pull that in. During the night, something happens, mechanical failure. Who's gotten those midnight or early morning calls that says there's something wrong in their buildings? One or two. And those are the things that now that the building is not just run by people, but there's technology available to tell you that there is something wrong, and so that it's not you getting the call, it's that call directly going to somebody who can do something about it. So by the time that everybody's walking in the office, the chiller's repaired, and you have that facility ready to operate for its tenants. 8 o'clock, employee comes. They plug in their car. Okay, this is starting to get different. We're now starting to see plug-in hybrids hit the market. Plug-in hybrids will create a significantly new energy draw for a facility. And that's something that isn't built into current electrical loads for buildings. So this is one that we have to think about, because right now everybody understands their load profile for the buildings, understands how their energy is used, understands where people park. But here's something that's going to change that and basically cause a new challenge that you have to think about. You don't want to be charging cars in the middle of the afternoon when you have your highest power draw. 9 o'clock, we got a meeting, got a big conference going. You want to know that this meeting is all set. You want to know that the room is ready, that the catering has been notified, that security knows that there's a stack of people here, what to do with the lights, what to do with the HVAC, so that it all comes together. Historically, that's all been in people's brains, and you have to have a hell of a facility manager to pull that off. Instead, the technology is already available to know that the tenant should be there, it has the reservation, optimal environment for them, and that there's actually sensing in the room to say, yep, there's either more people, send more HVAC, or it's a no-show. Turn off the lights, turn off the energy use, and free up the room for somebody else to use. And so hopefully one of the things you're starting to see is there's a big point about connection, and that it's basically the IT industry catching up with buildings about 20 years after the fact. CFO calls for carbon reporting data. You now have over half of the Fortune 500 reporting their global carbon emissions, both for direct owned as well as leased properties. This is something that both the corporations have a personal, in terms of the corporation commitment to, but there's also lots of non-governmental organizations that are adding pressure to report how our organizations using energy, using carbon. So I'm lucky enough on my phone, I can tell you right now what are Johnson Control's carbon emissions from around the world. So if anybody wants to ask, you can come up and take a peek later. But this is something that having that data and having that availability and having that insight into what's actually happening in your facility is critical, because it has implications not only locally for what's happening and how's that being used, but in a portfolio of what does that mean overall. Demand response. Anybody heard of demand response in the room? So this is a fun one. We've got a couple hands where the utility will pay you a benefit or a lower rate for agreeing to certain reductions in your energy load in your building. This seems pretty good. Everybody wins out of this. The utility has to spend less money on putting a capital investment and building another Oak Creek power plant. The building owner gets a benefit because they get paid for the efficiency that's used, and then the planet benefits because fewer carbon emissions. So what that utility is going to do, and this is something that's incredibly common East Coast, especially Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, where they will say, we need between 12 and 2 for you to take a reduction in the amount of energy you're going to use. Perfect. Let's reset the space temps up 2 degrees. Let's reduce the static pressure on the terminal units, and let's dim the lighting 20%. So everybody say, 20%? How am I actually going to see my work? Okay, don't tell the rest of the people at Johnson Controls. We dimmed their lights by 30% and nobody noticed. There are simple things you can do with the operation of the facility that get that energy benefit, that help the utility, and bring a payback through the technology that you deploy to make it happen. Same thing, now you get that power price triggers for the building itself, so it's not just for the tenant, but the building owner, the building manager. So now I can start doing things about pulling out that ice from thermal storage that I created the night before. I can increase the chiller set point. I can dim the lighting in the common areas, and I can start doing some other demand limiting within the facilities. Again, all things that are happening today and bring a significant benefit to the facility itself. So here's one that's good is, okay, it's a really hot day, and you have to get more aggressive about it. You can do more on lighting, you can do more on space, but now you want to throttle down those non-production servers in your data center. This is the fun fact of the data center per square foot consumes 20 times as much energy as a typical square foot of office space. So it's a huge energy draw. But there are smart things you can do when you integrate what's happening in the utility and what's happening within the operation of your facility to make this happen. And again, this is something that we're doing with clients in various parts of the world today, but it's bringing that connection of what's happening outside inside the building. Buildings aren't standalone anymore. They're part of an integrated community. So here's the ultimate hybrid. We talked about plug-in hybrids, but most people in this room have a laptop. You have one of the best hybrids already in terms of energy management. So your peak demand is between 2 and 4 each day. It's typically the hottest part of the day. And so you can tell your laptops to run off the battery as opposed to the plug. So you can get significant savings, especially since office equipment is starting to consume about 15 to 20% of a building's energy use. So you got cloud cover. Most buildings are going to start to have solar. We've got estimates of about 15 to 25% of commercial and corporate office space will have solar within the next 10 years. So you can use that solar, but you might get cloud cover. How do you then deal with that interaction? Because now you're not just getting a power feed direct from We Energies. You have various distributed sources of energy that are available to you. Great in terms of tax credits, great in terms of environmental credits, great in terms of engaging employees. I'm going to plug for Jill. But at the end of the day, you have to find a new way to deal with these different power sources. So somebody checks out of the office, they badge out, they remember to turn off their lights, their HVAC kicked down. There's some smart things you can do to integrate the facility with other systems that already exist. And again, this isn't something that's rocket science. It's something Johnson Controls has been doing since 1985. This is one that I love. When I come in Milwaukee Downtown, flying in at the end of a day, driving north on 43, and you see downtown lit up at night. And I'm saying to myself, oh, isn't that great? And then I'm like, oh my God, downtown is lit up at night. Why? And it's using those same systems to, again, reduce the energy draw and only use what you have to. And again, that's a benefit to everybody. It's a benefit to the tenant, benefit to the property owner, benefit to the utility. For us, and it's something we've been doing forever, like I said, Empire State Building, 38% energy savings. Oak Ridge National Labs, where they built the first atomic bomb, we've helped them reduce their fossil fuel usage by 80%. helped create one of the first net zero energy buildings in the United States, and Ave Maria, first Catholic university built in the US in 90 years down in Florida. We helped them tie together all of these systems. The takeaway for everyone here is that you're going to have buildings that aren't standalone buildings anymore. You can't treat them as islands because there's significant economic and operational advantages from tying all these pieces together, from linking it within the building itself to make all these systems work, to connecting it to the global environment, taking advantage of renewable energy, pulling it in from the smart grid to take advantage of any benefit with the utilities, as well as across an enterprise, and most importantly, to the bottom line. You've got the technology available. It provides significant benefits to your clients. It provides significant benefit in terms of the bottom line. And as a result, provides a great opportunity to show leadership in terms of what we can do in leading the way for the next 10 years.